Hello. So I am here with Helen from Kintsugi Print Studio. Print Studio. So we're actually in her print studio right now in Manhattan. Where exactly?
So on 101st Street on Broadway.
Okay, cool. So I met Helen about a year ago.
Yeah.
And we were in Squarespace and she was next to me and she was selling her prints. And then I found out from you that you also worked at Squarespace.
Yeah.
And so you still have a full-time job in doing that. What do you do?
Yeah, so formally my title is like senior software engineer, but basically I work on the front end part of Squarespace. So when someone comes to Squarespace and they go into the editor and make changes to their site or add content to it, they're touching code that either myself or like my teammates have written. So it's really fun.
Yeah.
And it's nice to work on something that's like customer facing.
Yeah.
And it's cool that people get to make websites for whether it's like their job, for their work, or just like a side passion. Yeah.
Is that helpful when you see that type of stuff? Because everyone that uses it, because I'm a Squarespace user, that's how I actually got invited in.
Yeah.
But does it do something for you when you see that?
I enjoy working on something that allows other people to express like their creative outlet. Oh. And it's really satisfying to know that something that I'm working on can potentially like millions of people might use it or do whatever with it for their own like uses.
That's really cool. Yeah. When did it start for you?
So I joined Squarespace as a new grad right out of school. So I've been there since 2019.
Oh, wow.
I've been there for 4.5 years or so.
Wow.
It's going to be 5 years next March.
Okay.
But I really enjoy who I work with and what I work on.
Yeah.
So I think I'm lucky in that way.
Yeah.
And at Squarespace, we care a lot about design, a lot about like creativity. And so it feels very homey to work there.
Yeah. How has it impacted you and actually your work here?
Well, because I do work at Squarespace, one of the perks is that I get like a comp site. So
that's
I basically
good job, Squarespace.
This is like secretly a plug, but I've been able to, host my store there, and it's kind of fun because
that's so cool.
I get to use the product and then see what could use improving and then build the thing.
That's like the best thing ever is like when you're actually your own user to
Pretty much. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that. And my teammates and people at the company, they're very supportive of this side, hobby and passion. It's not like an environment where they expect you to like give everything to your work and have nothing for yourself.
That's amazing.
So, right? Like that's great. Because I worked at other software companies before that are very stressful. You don't have any time. You're like burnt out. So even though it's like technically the same job title, it's not the same.
The culture is a little different.
Culture is very different. And so I could see another version if I didn't end up at Squarespace at another company where I wouldn't have time to do this on the side.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
So how did you even get into this?
Yeah. So it kind of started as a COVID hobby, not going to lie. Like in quarantine, I was trying to figure out like what to do. And so I was experimenting with block prints.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
what about it got you? What about it drew you in?
Actually, it's funny. So originally, like way back in high school when I graduated, I originally wanted to go to art school. And my mom said no. And I guess like that's fair, right? She's like, I'm not going to pay $50,000 for you to draw. Yeah. I was like, okay. And so I didn't do that. And there was also this short window of time where I semi-seriously wanted to become a tattoo artist instead of like going to college. Because I don't know, I had this bone to pick with like higher education, whatever. And so my senior year of high school, I took AP studio art. And one of the units we had was doing block prints. Right? So for example, like this is like linoleum. And this print is...
That's so cool.
So this is like...
linoleum, like literally like the stuff in your house linoleum?
Like the kitchen floor linoleum.
Gotcha.
And so we had this unit where we had to carve something on linoleum and print it. And I hated it. Like I remember I sat there being like... who is crazy enough just to sit around and carve and whatever? Well, no, joke's on me because now I do it and I love it.
Yeah.
But this one, for example, took a while. Like this is probably the print that took the longest to carve.
Yeah.
It took over just about like 20 hours or so.
Wow.
And it's really fun. So this is how the print, like the block itself is. And then when you print it, it's like the mirror image of it. And so this is like the
that's
printed
so
version.
Cool. That's
right?
really cool.
Thank you.
And also, I don't know if you can see this, but the paper is super unique. Like, talk to me about the paper.
Yeah. So with the paper, I basically try to like only use recycled materials.
That's awesome.
So either I get paper that's been already recycled or I make it myself. So
what does that even look like?
It's a whole thing. So basically I will literally collect paper bags like from delivery and things, and I will use a blender to kind of mix it all together.
Oh, literally there's a blender in the corner.
Literally, like I'll like rip up a bunch of paper, I put it in this thing, and I mix it with water to get pulp. And then I mix that in a big like vat of water. And then I use a decal to like scoop sheets out.
Yeah.
I can also like, should I grab parts of stuff?
Yeah, let's do it.
So yeah, sometimes for the prints, I'll also recycle the paper myself. So this print is an example of paper that I had recycled.
Yeah.
And the way
is so sad.
I know. I have a whole sad girl series we can walk through.
Okay.
So just
definitely do that
for the example. And I have another one here of another sad girl.
I have a sad girl print.
It's called Misery Drink. She's very
sad,
but it's okay. She's gonna be fine. So this is paper that I recycled, and the way that works is I literally collect paper bags.
That's awesome.
Like I have a crazy collection of them. And then what I'll do is I'll literally just like rip up the paper bags and throw it in this blender.
Okay.
Put a lot of water in it.
Yeah.
Blend it all together to get pulp, and then I'll mix that pulp in a big tub with other water. So I mix it all together, and then I'll use the decal, which looks like this. It's like a picture frame that has like a mesh screen. And
wait, do you make that too, or they actually sell these?
This they sell on Amazon.
Yeah.
So I got that, but I did like modify it a little bit because before it was like hinged on it.
Got it.
But this is a decal, and then you can just scoop individual sheets, and then I hang them to dry in my bathroom. So that's how that works.
So cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is how,
So that's how the paper is made.
Wow. This is all handcrafted then, like from beginning to end.
Yeah. So again, very grateful that I have the time to dedicate to this because it does take a lot.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Okay.
Cool. Yay.
Cool.
And then check green. Perfect. So this takes up a lot of time. Can you tell me like something like this print? Like from, you said it was 20 hours to carve it out.
Yeah.
And then what's the process like in total? How many hours is this print?
It depends because it's like once the block itself is carved out, right? So for this, to make another print, it's a combination of just like inking it.
Yeah.
I have a print press that I manually like press the prints with.
Okay, cool.
And then just like letting the ink dry.
Yeah.
So I would say it's like not terrible. Again, like let's say maybe 5 to 10 minutes for this.
Yeah.
But it took like how many hours to get to that point?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting like that.
Like it's a lot of front end work.
Initial investment is high. Yeah.
And then after that, it's kind of pretty good from there.
Yeah. It's not
minus
so bad.
if you make the recycled cheese.
Right. So for something I've been trying that's new is what I'll do is I'll go ahead and buy paper like for the larger sheets that they're already recycled, but they're recycled from materials that I don't know how to recycle yet.
Right.
This, for example, this is like Lucky Cat, which is a really popular print, and this is printed on recycled cotton paper. So that's why the material is a little different.
That's really cool.
Kind of like has more texture to it.
Yeah.
So I've been having a lot of fun, like experimenting. Yeah.
And when did this all start where you're actually selling it? Because I know you do that now.
Right. I would say officially last summer in May.
Okay.
That was like my first ever fair I did. And then
Wait, so you've been doing this as a hobby, kind of like, hey, we're just gonna make a couple prints here and there.
kind of, yeah. So actually this was the first print I ever made, which is called Ramen Cats.
Ah.
It's based on my 2 cats actually, that are home and here in the studio. They're just like hiding behind the camera.
Yes.
But this was the first print I ever did. I had so much fun with it.
Yeah.
And this was, at this point, I didn't think about selling anything. It was just for fun.
Yeah.
And then the next print I did after that was also cat themed, which is Lucky Cat.
Yeah.
So then I had these 2 prints, and I kind of started this like just before quarantine started.
Yeah.
And then at some point, like when COVID like came around, I was like, all right, I'm gonna just try to invest more time into doing block prints.
Yeah.
And then if we're gonna fast forward a bit to I would say about actually last year, like 2022, because I got into it and then I took a break.
Yeah.
And then what happened in 2022 in February is that my rent went up like 9 to 10%.
Oh my God.
And I remember being like, that's expensive.
Wow.
And I kind of took that as a moment to be like, all right, well, let's try to save money on one end, right? Like, let me get more groceries, let me cook more.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, I was like, well, maybe I can like get more income, which wasn't like really like the reason. It was kind of an excuse to be like, well, why not try to look into selling prints?
I really like how your head went in that way where it's like rent went up. I was like, oh shit. Now I gotta like figure other things out.
Yeah. And so after that happened, I was like, all right, let's just use this as an excuse. Just go into the print thing. And then between February and March of last year, I invested all the time to like get set up.
Yep.
Because in order to do street fairs, which is what I mainly do, you need to get vendor permits and like all this like regulation stuff that actually took very long.
Yeah.
But once that kind of got sorted, I did my first ever street fair May of last year.
That's
so
awesome. Can you talk about the street fair? Like how, I know you said it's a long process, but I think not a lot of people understand what goes into it. Walk me through what that looked like or felt like for you just doing it.
Yeah. I consider myself someone who's like very open to things. And so kind of going into the street fair, I was just like, well, let's just see, right? And in my head, I considered it a win if anybody walked by my tent and they're like, oh yeah, I want that art like in my home or as like a gift to like a dear friend or relative. Like I just, even if one person wanted that, like I would consider that like goal.
A win.
A big win.
Yeah.
And I think on the very first fair, I think I made maybe like 15 or I need to double check, but it's around like maybe 15 sales or so. And I was like very happy. I was like, wow.
You're like, it's like people like my stuff.
Yeah. And I was very grateful for that. It was very scary.
Yeah.
The first fair is always the hardest because you don't know how it's like works or how it's set up.
Yeah.
And so something I learned is that when you see a street fair, like all those vendors with their tents, like each vendor had to bring their tent. Like all that setup, everything you see, they had to bring. Because I remember I registered for my first event and I was calling the company and I was like, hey, so how does it work? And the lady was like, okay, so you have a permit. So you get a 10 by 10 plot on the street and she's like, and the air, like that's it. Whatever you want to bring, you go and bring it, but we don't have anything for you. Like I couldn't rent a tent, I couldn't rent a table or anything.
Oh my God, that's so stressful.
So I had to buy all that and set all that up. In addition to like,
how do you even fit that into like this space?
Yeah, thankfully there is like a tent that I use that like folds down. But basically again, everything on top of the actual like print,
this stuff
I have to bring. But I remember actually my very first customer ever, very sentimental to me because he came up to my tent very shortly after the fair started, like maybe around 11:30 in the morning, and the fair started at 10. And he walked like right up to my tent and he was like, oh, I want that one. And it was a framed yearning bonsai tree, which is funny because that was actually the first print I ever made with the intention of like maybe selling it.
Wow.
And he was really funny. And he like walks up and again, I remember because it was a framed print too, which based on pricing was like a pricier one. So I was like not sure how to price things, but you know, he immediately was like, no, I want that one. And we were like chatting and I got to know him better. And it turns out, because I'm from New York and he also is from New York and he grew up in a similar neighborhood to me. Like I grew up in Jackson Heights and so did he. So it was so cool. Random. To like have basically someone I probably passed by in the street or something when I was like growing up to like be my first customer. Yeah. Very sentimental.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And then, so you sold it and you're like, all right, I want to keep doing this.
Yeah. So another part of why I got into this whole print thing is because, you know, commitment and consistency are things that I struggle with just generally. And I think Kintsugi Print Studio is maybe the first big commitment that I've ever made that I have like fully every intention to keep going. Aww. So it's nice in that way because a lot of the time, like I'll start something. Like I used to be like a very big side project person, jumping from project to project. And now it's like funny because I have a permanent.
No, I love this.
But it's nice to just kind of have something that I'm committed to no matter what. And I don't have that of like, oh, should I or should I not in my brain? Like it's eliminated. And it's just nice to see how like my prints will evolve over time. Aww. Right? Because like last year I started with like Lucky Cat and the Dragon and they're awesome. And then it evolved into Sad Girl because then I eventually got to a point where the art was an outlet for me to process my feelings.
That's really awesome. Was it ever before?
Before, no, it was just for fun.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it didn't start.
How you evolved through this process.
Yeah, it didn't start until I would say like around actually this time last year. And so I went from, again, you know, doing like fun prints to doing more personal ones. So the first one is this one, which is called An Unbearable Weight. And inspired by Junji Ito is like one of my favorite artists. And so I, at that point in time, was kind of processing some, you know, childhood trauma and like all the fun things. And I realized like, I don't know, it just came to me like this idea. I just wanted to draw this woman just like carrying
just that
her
burden.
It's literally a burden, right? And I feel like in a way, sometimes if I can't articulate with words, like the print can do it for me. So sometimes it's like, yeah, this is how I'm feeling today. Like,
no, I love that.
And I also, the fact that, you know, I'm doing this purely as a creative outlet, I enjoy. And it's less so about, oh, what print can I make that people are going to buy and like what's going to sell really well. And
there's less of that pressure for you.
Less pressure. And it keeps the intention pure. And I think it's really cool because I don't like if I make a new print, right? And let's say it doesn't sell immediately. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, that was a failure. Like that sucked. Like I know eventually there'll be a market for it. And again, it's like if people want it, they'll get it. Eventually it'll land. But ultimately it's just me expressing
I love that.
myself.
Because it's like, oh, walk us. Let's see. What are the other series? I know this is a Sad Girl series. Sad Girl series.
Sad Girl series. Okay. So walking through first, we have An Unbearable Weight. And this was when I kind of first was opening that door and processing things. And for me, the way to process emotions that I guess we could consider like negative is to not bury them and just sit with them. And sitting with that look like this. So this is the first one.
I love that.
And then after that initial period of like realizing I had all this stuff to sort through.
That's crazy how this piece made you realize like, oh shit.
Yeah, I got some homework to do
emotionally.
So then I went from being kind of like sad, really melancholy to rage, anger. So this is the second one. It's called Silent Rage.
Yeah.
And I love this print so much. And it's funny because this is actually one of the prints that does the best. Like,
that's hilarious.
Like, I love how people look at her and they're like, I relate for my own reasons. I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
And this one was inspired.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kind of my feelings of like frustration with, I guess how to say, in particular, it's like specifically for me, this kind of represents all the times I felt like objectified and or like not supported or other people like projecting their things on me. Yeah. And so that's where this comes from. But I like how other people have their own interpretation and their own reasoning for why this print
like
appeals.
Speaks to them.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So Silent Rage, she's very mad.
Do people share that with you? When
sometimes, or sometimes it's just like a silent like, I feel that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get that. Yeah.
And that's cool too.
Yeah.
So it went from rage to the next phase. So this is a print I did earlier this year in January. Mm-hmm. And this one is called Snowdrop Bloom.
Oh.
So this one is kind of a first step in, I guess, the healing journey.
Yeah.
And so the reason why it's called Snowdrop Bloom is because snowdrop is the birth flower the birth flower for January.
Oh, nice.
So for the timing of that, and also because I think the flower itself represents like new beginnings, a fresh start.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to incorporate that, and that's kind of how I felt like with myself. So that's like it's like me holding myself.
Yeah, yeah.
But other people interpret this as like there's like a mother energy in there.
Yeah, with the hands. Yeah.
Yeah, like caring and balance.
Yeah.
And so I think it's cool how people get drawn to this for different reasons also.
I like that.
So going on from here, the next print we have in the Sad Girl series is this one that you have.
Yes, I have this one.
So this one's called Misery Drink. It's a self-portrait. I mean, most of the Sad Girl ones are self-portrait.
Yeah.
And this one was inspired by a breakup I had this past summer with a long-term relationship of like 3 years.
Yeah.
And that relationship ended at the end of a vacation. Of course, the best time to be like, let's just snip. Yeah. An international one at that too.
Oh no.
So I was in the airport, like in my layover right after the breakup. Not with him because he had other plans for the vacation and he's still there. But I was so sad and it was so fresh to me. Yeah. So I literally just sat there in the airport and just like drew her out. And then I came home and I carved her. Yeah. And I think with prints, it's kind of funny because each print I do is like during this specific period of my life. Yeah. And so it's funny because like where I was before I started this print, after finishing carving it, and like now where I'm at, totally different places. Yeah. But it's cool to have these little like bookmarks.
I think so too.
For my journey.
Yeah. I think so too. It's like, it's one of those things where like in life, there's always a process you go through and you know that you already overcame that, which is kind of cool because you weren't, after you're selling this, you're like, that was me? Right. That's not me anymore.
Yeah, this is, although sometimes we have sad girl moments, like it's okay to have those moments. You just don't have to live there. Yeah. But so this was the first one. And then after this period, the next one.
It's like a reminder. It's like a reminder that you'll get through it because it's like literally bookmark for you.
This one is called Stairs to Nowhere. And I don't know, she's moody. And this is paper I also recycled.
That's lovely.
Thank you.
It's really pretty.
So Stairs to Nowhere, this represented a period of time where this was after this breakup where it was kind of weird because we were in this weird limbo of like, oh, do we try again? Do we revisit that relationship? If so, like, what are the conditions and a lot of that kind of thinking. Yeah. And for a while, I just felt like my mind was just like going in a loop about like the same things, the same person, the same conundrum. Yeah. Whatever, same predicament. And I got inspired by the idea of like a liminal space, which I don't know if you've heard of, but so a liminal space is kind of it's not a destination, but it's a place of passage between point A and point B. So a really good example of a liminal space is like airports or elevators. And so it's this idea of,
I like that.
Like, that's not where you're meant to end up, but you're going somewhere.
Yeah, there's a gap and you have to kind of like pass that gap.
Right.
That's
so this is what this was. And I felt like at this point in time, I felt like I was in a place of transition in my life, in that like I was in this like figurative like elevator, and I knew that I was going somewhere, but I didn't know when I would arrive or where I would arrive until the elevator doors opened. But I knew they would open. And that's kind of what this is.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And that's why her hair is long. It's a self-portrait, but we don't know how long she's been in the box.
Yeah.
It's been a while. But this is my first print where she's like not actively like sad and crying.
Yeah.
Improvement. Like she's kind of like...
The color is also different too, as I'm looking at your other work.
Yeah, I was experimenting with color a bit more, and she seems like okay to be in the box.
Yeah.
So that's progress, right? Like if you're okay with where you're at, like that's good.
I love that.
And then I guess this is called a Sad Girl series, but maybe also Sad Girl and Healing series.
Yeah.
So the next print I made after this one is called... Lotus Geisha.
Oh.
So this one, I was trying to channel more calming energy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to use my art to manifest that, right? So even if I'm not exactly there yet, I'm going to just make the print.
I just like your thought process. And I'm so happy that you're actually talking about it out loud.
Yeah.
This is so cool.
Yeah. So she's very calm. She's very zen, you know, very collected.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think it actually did work where I made the print, and then when I was done with the print, I realized like where I was mentally was in a much better place. Yeah. And so that was really fun. And I think she's like a really cool print.
I think it's like very strong, very calm.
Yeah. So I've been playing with more like graphic elements in the prints. And then the latest print that I have is actually based on my life motto. And it's one of the prints that it's a self-portrait, but it's the first one where I didn't put like a little mole. But I still see myself in it. And this one is called Comfort in the Discomfort. And it's kind of based on my life motto because life always is like that.
100.
And right? And there's no such thing as a break or time off. Like it's always kind of like
it's
that.
Moving, and even you can kind of see her hair.
Right. Like, and so this is kind of this print is a visual representation of kind of just being okay with everything going on and being comfortable managing all of it. Yeah. And this one I also experimented with different colors. So it was super fun. Like the same print has a different feeling depending on
definitely the color.
Yeah,
it does.
Or even like the color of the paper, which is super cool. Because it's the same exact print, same colors.
What type is that?
So this is recycled cotton paper. And I believe this is as well, but this is black.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's cool to see, you know,
the composition changes.
Exactly. So block printing has been a lot of fun. Yay. So kintsugi, if you don't know, is this Japanese tradition of repairing broken pottery. So if like a bowl breaks, for example, instead of throwing it away, they will put it together and they'll use gold actually to fill in the cracks.
I love that.
And the idea is that the bowl, after it had cracked and been repaired, is like more beautiful and has more character after the fact. And so I really like that idea and the philosophy behind that. So here's an example of like kintsugi, and I use like a little bit of gold ink in it. So
that's pretty.
To represent like the gold filling. But normally, this would be like pottery. And so it's a similar idea for my prints because I'm taking, you know, my DoorDash bags, junk mail, random bits of paper, and I'm recycling it and making art out of
Yeah.
what people will consider trash. So that's why it's called Kintsugi Print Studio.
Yeah. Yay. I guess we're at the end of the year already. It's December. What's 2024 looking like when it comes to this?
So all I know is that I'm gonna keep making prints, and whatever speaks to me, I'll kind of just create.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I know that's for certain is that I will still be making prints.
That's amazing.
And again, like I could never predict how the prints would evolve over time. So I'm excited to see how they change over the next year.
Me too. I can't wait to see the storylines.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to continue doing it, but I personally enjoy like even listening to how each of these prints were created.
Yeah, definitely. So it'll probably be a mix of prints that I think are visually stimulating, and then personal experiences,
That's amazing.
Processing feelings as I always do through the art.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, the fact that, I really did commit to this. I saw it all the way through, and I have no intention of like stopping on it.
Yeah.
That's comforting for me because in the past, again, I've been very iffy on commitments. I haven't been good for keeping with things consistently.
Yeah.
And I feel really fortunate to find a really fulfilling creative outlet that I want to like engage with.
That's amazing. And that you're excited to engage with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny because I feel like I don't know where I read this or heard this from, but it always stuck with me. And it's this idea that we are really bad at guessing or estimating how much we can accomplish in a short period of time.
Uh-huh.
So a week from now, a month from now, we're not so good at predicting like where we're going to be at.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that the inverse happens with long periods of time.
Yeah.
So we overshoot for short-term goals.
Yeah.
But for long-term goals, we usually underestimate. So so we underestimate how much progress we can make in 5 years, 10 years.
I've heard,
we overestimate how much we can get done in 3 months.
Yeah.
And so for me, I just think, 5, 10 years from now, I'm going to still be making prints. I have no idea.
That's awesome.
What my prints are going to look like.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have fun, and it's going to be super cool. Yeah.
I really like that. And in terms of like your mom, because I remember that story you said earlier about like, she's not going to be supportive. What does your family think about this?
Yeah. So definitely.
They're still in New York.
They're still in New York. There's definitely been a shift.
Okay.
My mom is like supportive and happy for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we got there without having to address a lot of like the icky stuff underneath, which I've like worked through and I'm working through now.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for that. So actually this past holiday market I did in December, it was the first fair that my mom actually came to.
What?
Yeah.
Hold on. That's a long period of time.
Yeah. So it was the first one where she kind of came, she brought my siblings, and it was really sweet. And also because this market was indoors, so I felt comfortable like kind of inviting them.
Yeah.
And so that was really nice. And I know even if she doesn't show up, that she still is like supportive and happy for me.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah. What was that like did you see her reaction, or what was that like for you to be like, my mother's physically here seeing this?
Yeah, I think it was a really sweet moment. I wish we took a picture. It's fine, but it's okay. It like lives in my brain rent free. I'm really touched by the gesture, and I just feel very appreciative for anyone who comes by the fair. Of course, my mother, especially our history.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to know that she does wish me well.
Yeah.
Even if initially she wasn't supportive and all that.
Yeah.
Like now that she is, like that's great. Yeah.
That's amazing. And then I think one of the last questions is, what advice would you give to someone who wants to do something like this or have a creative outlet and like you have a full-time job?
Okay. Well, one, I guess it depends on if they already know what that outlet looks like for them. Because I think sometimes people, it's like two parts, right? It's like the first part is like figuring out what you even want to do or like to do enough to spend your free time on it. And then the other is how do you cultivate that and keep it going?
That. Yeah.
And so I guess for the first part, if someone's still trying to figure out exactly what their outlet is, because not everyone, block prints are very specific.
Yeah,
so
100.
I understand that it's like not for everybody, but I do feel that everyone has their own version of a creative outlet.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be artistic. It
I
could
agree
be,
with you.
right, like
I
a
totally
hobby.
agree with you. Yeah.
Anything that they just are naturally drawn to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think something that helps with sparking creativity, if that's kind of the wall you're hitting, is to like let yourself be bored. If that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like just existing without any goal in mind.
I actually like that a lot.
Yeah.
That's what COVID provided.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't like okay, just FYI, it's not the best thing. I'm not saying that, but that gave you the room to be like, huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it could be as simple as like just going for a walk in the park.
Yeah.
Just cause. Or, like if you're on the way to like see your friend and whatever, like instead of plugging in and being on your phone the whole time on the way to see them, just like be in that space.
Yeah.
And sometimes like the best ideas kind of just, they come out of boredom,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
And I think right now technology and everything makes it really hard to do that.
Yeah.
Because you want to just like be zen and relaxed, but then your apps are like, hello, look at us.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
So it's challenging, but if you make a concerted effort, that can help.
Yeah.
And again, if it's not drawing, like they're just whatever you are drawn to, there can be a way to like cultivate that more.
Mm-hmm.
And a piece of advice I'd give for someone who, let's say, kind of has an idea of what they want to do, but they struggle with sticking with it. Something that works for me is not being driven by outcomes.
I love that.
Because, for example, if I make a print and it doesn't sell, and if the outcome is like I wanted it to sell like hotcakes, then I'm like, oh, that was a failure.
Yeah.
That's not what I wanted. And then it's easy to like be demotivated from that.
Yeah.
So for me, I found that working on these prints and just the process itself inherently is something that I've like fallen in love with, right?
Yeah.
So falling in love with the process of that work or hobby, whatever it is, and seeing that like just by virtue of doing it, there's value intrinsically in it, right?
Yes, I love that.
Even if it doesn't sell or even if no one else sees it, like if you like to write, go write. It doesn't matter if your blog doesn't blow up immediately or whatever that hobby is. And so that's how I find it like fulfilling, and I can stay invested in it even if whatever outcome doesn't happen because I'm not attached to that.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. Perfect advice. Okay. And then also the last part, where can someone find you? Where can they get the print? Where can they learn more about you?
Yeah, sure. So I have an Instagram account you can follow at kintsugi.print. I also have a TikTok that has nothing on it, but maybe I'll start.
Maybe 2024.
Maybe 2024 I'll start. Same handle, kintsugi.print. And my website is kintsugiprint.studio.
Awesome. Do you want to spell that out?
Yeah. KINTSUGI print dot studio. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yay. Thanks, Helen.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Yay. I love this. And done.